Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weiss, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zadlin. How's it going, man?
Ben is going well. I just came back from Boston to see my brother, and it's ironic that of the entire time of the year that I chose to go to Boston, I chose to go after the indoor track season has concluded. So very appropriate, but happy to be back and happy to actually get back in time to chat with you about outdoor track. We're here.
Yeah,
We started. So yeah.
it comes quickly, and I was like, all right, Raleigh has to be coming up, and then as we're kind of talking about it, it's like, all right, yeah, well, sure enough, next weekend
Yep.
on Easter weekend, which I
Yeah,
do,
with Stanford Invite.
yeah, like I remember as an athlete always just like praying that like we didn't end up competing or like the big meets didn't end up on like those
Yeah.
weekends because it's always just it's tough to manage. Like you want to see family, like different people have like religious things that have going on. Like it's just a awkward time to be racing.
Did Joe Walker at Mississippi ever conflict with that?
Yeah, and the one that conflicted with us was the Vanderbilt meet.
Yeah.
And so that
Okay.
often and that ended up working out fine because we were already in Nashville, so like it wasn't
Right.
that wasn't as big of a deal for me. But yeah, it's just always an interesting time period to be racing with Easter being so early this year.
Well, with that though, you would hope that we'd actually get with a new season new reviews, and we have not. It's still +0 on both Apple and Spotify. Please leave a rating and review. That'd be great. But also go on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. We also just put out like a bunch of great interviews uh,
Yes.
from the Pineview Invitational. A lot of Utah's top names: Danny Simmons, JoJo Jordan. Really good insight on a lot of that stuff. A lot of those names. Lily Alder, another great name there. So go check those out. Good handful of interviews there. Ben, believe it or not, despite what we believe to be the off season, there were actually performances that have happened as of late, a handful of really solid ones. I
Mhm.
don't know if we're really going to have the most extensive podcast today, but if we have, if we need time, we will add. If not, maybe we'll hold that off for another time. So I'll leave it to you. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, and before we get into it, I think we're coming off the high of a national championship a couple weeks ago, where it's like everything we were looking at through the lens of is this person going to win a title? Are they going to be an All American? And then
Right.
get these results where they like you said, a lot of them really solid, some of them spectacular, and it's just hard to get quite as excited about some of these, even though they are good times
They are.
when we have this paradigm of like national champion, like if you're going to win a title or not, and so I want to make sure that we say that first before we go into a lot of these results. If we sound a little underwhelmed, I hope we don't. Just put throwing that caveat out before we go. One result.
Everything's gonna be a big deal for me. So I will put on a show. That's for
There you
sure.
go. All right. Garrett will pull me along.
I
One
will.
result though that needs no disclaimer is Michaela Rose's 600-meter NCAA record of 125.75, smashing the previous record of 128.02 set, I think, 2 years ago. Just an outstanding performance. It's hard to say we learned a lot about Michaela Rose because we know that she's capable of doing things like this. When you don't run as many sub twos in the 800 as she does without being able to run significantly under 130. I was a little surprised to see it quite this quick, but I mean, again, she's that kind of talent.
Yeah. So here's the thing with this one. The record was 128, right? For outdoors,
Yeah,
the outdoor 600-meter record. The indoor 600-meter record though is 125.
yeah.
So the more accurate, resemblance there is that. So she has the outdoor record of 125.75, which is like not even remote. Like it destroys the other record. It's not even remotely close. It's 2.5 seconds in a race that's not even a half mile long, and so it would be the second fastest all time,
Who's number
behind
one
only
in the indoor list?
Britton Wilson,
Okay,
and
that
number
makes
two
sense.
is Ethan Moe. So
Pretty good list.
pretty good list. Sanu Jallow was number 3 this year as well. So like from that perspective, you're like, that's about right. That should be it. But it also surprises me to be like, really? No one else like ran faster than 128 on the outdoor track. Like I know it's not as nearly contested,
Yep.
but I was a little surprised. I was like, wait, really? Like that was the record? So,
None
or
of
at
the
least
top,
that was the record by that much, I should say.
right. Yeah. None of the top women just wanted to say, hey, I want to get an NCAA record this season.
Yeah.
Like this seems like low hanging fruit. Like, yeah. That makes sense. And when you put it in that context of the indoor list, I think the result makes a lot more sense. I mean, really the only person you can compare her to over in the 800 over the last few years is I think Mo.
Yeah.
So I think those two being right neck and neck in this kind of 600-meter discussion, I think is appropriate. It just shows you how good Rose has been. Obviously, she didn't bring home that NCAA title, finishing second during the indoor championships. But I mean, I don't know about you. I think she still is firmly the favorite going into the outdoor season in the 800.
I don't know if I'd say firmly because I think firmly implies that there is no
Yeah, sure.
other, Um, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The NCAA record is 157.73. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe?
Yeah, I would say maybe. Yeah, okay.
Hold on. Let's do a 1, 2, 3 countdown, and then we'll both give our answer. Okay, ready? All
Yep.
right, 3, 2, 1,
3.
4.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was between a 3 and a 4, so I think
Yeah.
it's like it could happen. I would be surprised if it happened, but I wouldn't be like falling out of my chair.
I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't
Right.
be like, oh, of all the people, Michaela Rose. No,
Right.
like if there's anyone's gonna do it, it's gonna be her. But it's amazing how like you look at that outdoor list and like it's still pretty intact from like the early 2000s and the, like it really Mo and Rose are like the first ones in like recent history to kind of really crack like that top 10 list. Seymour as well, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else on this result? Breaking news: Michaela Rose is good.
No, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Elsewhere in the 800, we saw Kimar Farquharson of Texas A&M. Gonna go with that. I think that might be right. Run 146 in the 800 for Texas A&M. He comes from the JUCO ranks last year, where he, I believe, finished second at the outdoor championships in the 800, running 147.25. So this is a significant PR.
I will say he actually ran 146.88 for South Plains in 2022 of the spring. So that's
Okay.
It might be easy to miss. So it's still over half
significant PR. Yeah. Still big, running 146 low, and taking home the win. I mean, great result. His first run, I think, in the outdoor season for A&M, he looked solid during the indoor season, but didn't seem to quite be able to reach the peak of his talent. I think he ran 147.8 was his best mark during the indoor season. Contributed to their 4x400 team, though, that finished third in indoor nats, and looks like he's ready to roll this outdoor season. And in an 800 field that is kind of all over the place, I mean, obviously we expect Yusuf Bizimana to come back strong this outdoor season, but he looks like someone who could capitalize on this kind of uncertainty in this field and start edging towards an All-American position.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys where it's like you never question how fit he is. Like you can see there's a ton of raw fitness there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just going back to his spring campaigns at the JUCO level, 146.88. He ran 147, 147. Like these are significant marks that he's run at pretty significant meets too. So like the talent is there. He can probably be just as good as a handful of All-Americans. But I think the question becomes of tactics. I think it becomes of like how are you going to handle racing against certain names. I think SECs was like an interesting look into that where he's fourth in the finals, competitive, but not clearly just not at the same level as Whitmarsh or some of these other guys here. So this is a great step forward. I'm not totally stunned. Now let's see what happens when someone's running with you kind of thing, like that will be kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think about the idea that in the 800 tactics aren't quite as important during the outdoor season as they are during the indoor, where you can kind of get by with, especially since it's normally run just all out in almost all the championship kind of settings. It's more about, hey, do you have the fitness? Do you think that's going to be, I mean, one, do you agree with that? And do you think that's going to be, two, do you think that'll be a big benefit for him moving forward this season?
I like that point. Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that. What I think when I say tactics, though, on the outdoor oval, I think what I mean, like tactics on the outdoor oval, is a little different than tactics on the indoor oval.
Sure.
Tactics, what I mean is like how it's more like how comfortable are you navigating around other star caliber talents who are going to be with you
Hmm.
with 200 to go. You
Yeah.
know, well, like how are you with like near that crowd, the pressure that comes with just being confined on the rail or trying to get around someone on the outdoor track at a high level. Whereas indoor track, it's all about positioning
Yeah.
when you make your move. That's more I think of the difference there. So yeah, I think raw fitness is certainly rewarded more on the outdoor oval than it is on the indoor oval. I think Will Sumner is like a perfect example of
Sure.
that. Like a freshman's not really supposed to be running as well as he did last year, but a 144 and you're on the outdoor oval, and if you're push, guess what? You get an Adidas contract. Like I would like to do that, but I don't really have the wheels to do that. So, um, yeah, I do like that line of thinking. I just don't know if it's exactly I don't know if it's just like parallel scenarios, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that's kind of what we talked about with Michaela Rose during the national championship about like maybe it was a little unnerving for her to have someone right next to her in the last 60 meters when she hadn't really had that all season. And you
Hmm.
wonder if that kind of affects you when you haven't experienced it. So I think I understand what you're saying with Farquharson. Um, let's move on to some 800-meter performances on the women's side, though. Gladys Chepnetich of Clemson running what I believe to be a PR of 201.7 this past weekend, coming off just narrowly missing out on finals during the indoor national meet. She had a very good indoor season and looks like she's picking up right where she left off. A couple other performances, and we can touch on her more, but just wanted to get these out there. Victoria Bossung of Harvard, 202, and Kate Jendrezak of UCLA running 202, picking up right where she left off during the indoor season as well. A lot of like 202 or faster times already. Pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, no, great marks. Chepnetich, we learned nothing new about.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just like she just soloed it basically. Um, I'd love to tell you more, but this is it. Like we learned it. I think she can go too flat later
Yep.
this year. That's it. Like that's all I
I
have.
don't have anything else. I couldn't agree more.
Victoria Balsong, I think, is significant.
Yes.
Like I think she's been building and building. I'm sure you've seen her name. I've
Hmm.
seen her name. Like it's just kind of, pops up here or there in these results, and you go, oh, who's like sneaky good, Victoria Balsong, right? And she wasn't really like a factor at the highest levels
Hmm.
of maybe the Ivy League or maybe of whatever Northeast meets were up there, other than Boston, I guess. But all I'm saying is that she runs 204 multiple times on the indoor oval. Um, she has some pretty decent experience. I mean, she's more of a 400-meter runner. 202 though is significant, and like if
Hmm.
you kind of go back and like look at some of her marks, that skips the 203 ranks entirely. So I think you could see the momentum building during the winter, and now, like you said, the raw fitness now begins to come out a little bit more in ways that you maybe didn't initially see. So, I would watch her. She's experienced. She has good pedigree in the 400 meters. She built a nice base during the indoor track season, and now she's clearly taking a step forward. Um, and she's also run 129 for 600 meters, which, as we've now learned, is pretty decent. So.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. You see like these results like here and there throughout her indoor season. That 129 was going to be the one that I mentioned that she ran in December. I think that is an indicator that something like this was possible. She finishes up her indoor season with a 52.7 in the 4. Like these are good times that reflect someone that has the capability of running that 202 that she eventually did. Now it'll just be interesting to see if she can build on that, if she can continue this momentum, or if, because it seems like her season has kind of been like a little patchy where it's like, hey, you have this really good result here. And not to say that she's had any like really bad performances. It's just that you have these kind of standout ones mixed in with some of more normal results. If she can continue to build on this, or if this will be a little bit of a one-time performance. But like you, I think this is very promising, and I think could lead to her being a factor at regionals at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other fun fact. Bosong is 0.13 seconds off from being the indoor 500-meter collegiate record holder. She's run 108.53. Sage Watson ran 108.4 in 2017. So, like, that's a significant sign in my eyes.
Yeah.
You need to build more of a base, more endurance, more strength, but that's what the indoor track season is for. If you're going to be a 400, 500 runner moving up to the 800, you usually introduce that during the outdoor track season, or at least in my experience for all the athletes that I've known, that's usually how it's worked. So just saying, I think you and I now, like, I think we've seen like the buildup, but we didn't have anything in particular to be like, hey, this is who we absolutely must definitely watch.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think we have enough of a bigger picture to say there is something here. This isn't just a fluke 202. This is the real deal. Watch out for her.
Yep, yeah, absolutely, couldn't agree more. And then for Jendrezak, just picking up where she left off, this indoor season ran 2:04.6 right before the national meet. Didn't have probably her greatest performance at the national meet, but then comes back, bounces right back, another sub 2:03 performance.
She's great. I mean, she's having a great season.
Yeah,
Easily the best year by far. I have nothing more to say.
All right, let's go to some 1500s then. Elliot Cook, to the surprise of nobody, runs 3:42. That's the fastest time in the country so far. Really don't have a lot to say other than, hey, it's good that he's running well. On the women's side, Riley Penn, 4:11. I thought this was kind of a little bit of a standout performance. I mean, obviously she's capable. We know she's capable of running fast times, but to run that fast this early in the season, I think is very impressive. Bailey Hertenstein running a converted 4:15. Good to see that she's healthy and running well. Anything else on those 1500 meters?
I think the 1500 meters, I want to talk about Oregon. Can we
Sure.
talk about Oregon? Like, how important is it that they have a good season? Because
Oh,
here's so outside of
Yeah.
everyone else who's listening. So Elliot Cook 3:42 wins it at the Oregon preview. It's just like Oregon's rust buster meet of the spring
Yeah.
season. So, Simeon Beerbaum is back,
Mhm.
runs 3:45. Matthew Erickson runs 3:45. Isaiah Sturry's back. He ran 3:47. You go down the list, it begins to drift from there. How important is it that the Oregon men have a decent season?
I think it's pretty important. I mean, you think about this last indoor season and just wasn't really a factor in the way that you would imagine that they would. I mean, they've dominated the middle distances in years past, and that they, like I said, they just weren't a factor. They need, and they don't need to be dominant. They just need to have a presence at the national meet and kind of build, and not even that, just build some positive momentum going into next year, because it just feels like you have had this progress halted. And you can almost say that on the women's side a little bit too, where it's just like, although to a lesser extent, where it just doesn't feel like the ball is rolling forward as fast as it was before. And things have stagnated, and just to get things headed in the right direction, I think would be a really important thing for them to do this season.
I think the women, I'm actually very high on the women.
I am too. I don't know. We didn't see the peaks that we saw from the past outdoor season.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Really? Okay.
I don't know. I think Elmore was definitively
Elmore was
better.
great. Yeah.
I think Solana Ayelda has clearly improved. I think Mia Barnett wasn't that much more different than she was from last winter. I think 433 is roughly 433 is roughly on par.
I guess what they did at the national meet wasn't quite as. I guess is what I kind of the point.
Kazmierska was still an All-American. You know, I mean, do they have the title contender? Maybe not, but I didn't really think it was all that dramatically different.
Yeah, I guess they just didn't improve. Like they didn't build on it. I guess it was kind of my point.
To some extent, sure.
Okay,
I don't know if I agree entirely.
I will agree with you on Elmore. I love what she's been doing.
Also, one of like the 6 like top women they have. Okay, thank you, Ben. So going back to the men, I think this is an important season. Yeah, I think it's an important season, and I'll leave it at that.
And I mean, you think about their recruiting class that they just brought in this year on the men's side, and really truthfully haven't gotten a whole lot out of those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, still plenty of time, not to pull the alarm bells on that in any way, but Bowerman track club kind of blew up. This is a big job for coach to bring it. I mean, and Shalane Flanagan's done great, but yeah, I agree with you that we need to see something, right?
Yeah, and again, I'm not reporting anything. I'm not saying anything like that, but it is important when you get star caliber athletes that where it's like if you go an entire year and you just don't get results from not just 1 or 2 athletes, but from anyone, you especially like you said with Bowerman, there begins to be enough signs where you go like, ooh, well, how patient is everyone? I'm not. I don't know if I necessarily am expecting like a mass exodus or anything along those lines, but
Yeah.
I do think it's important to gain momentum, get some foundation, especially as you go into another cross country season. Which, frankly, I don't know. I don't know how confident we are now going into this upcoming cross country season until we see how the spring season goes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, far from us to be questioning Coach Schumacher and after all he's done, but I mean, this is a results business, and you gotta see stuff. It was a big hire for them to bring him in, and he's got a lot of responsibility, and with that comes high expectations, especially at Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, though, we saw some good 3K steeplechases from some of their guys. Giuliani. Scasso took home the win, running 8:49 in the steeplechase. You had the pair of BYU runners, Wyatt Houghton and James Corrigan, running 8:50. Then you had Benjamin Bellas of Oregon running 8:53 to finish 4th. Good performances. Again, steeplechase is one of those events we talk about how what you run at the beginning of the year versus what you run at regionals and nationals is a huge gap. So if you're already running 8:49, if your season goes as it does for many steeplechasers, this guy could be running 8:35 by the end of the year, 8:30. And so I think that's what's really exciting about these performances, that there's a lot of projection in that, but these guys are on the path to running some really quick times by the end of the year.
And they're young too.
Yeah.
They're young, a lot of upside, and in the steeplechase, it feels like you can, with a good race or two, you can drop a lot of time.
Yes.
You can drop a lot of time. So I like this a lot. It's kind of funny how like Oregon has historically not been a steeplechase school.
Yeah.
It's not as of late. And then ironically, this is probably at least as of right now where I see the most promise for them. It was kind of that case last year, frankly. Like, I mean, Elliot Cook, don't get me wrong, has been great. Like he is kind of like that heart and soul of that team right now. But yeah, it's interesting to see that. So I do like their steeplechasers. I think that, they have actually guys beyond just these 2 dudes. And let me double check. Like Sergio Del Barrio, he's a freshman from Spain. I think he's run like 8:34. So like, he hasn't even tried. He hasn't even, tried yet. And I'm sure there's some other person, one other guy who I'm not even thinking of. Like, is Luke Affolter? Is he? No, I'm thinking of someone else. Then I think I might be thinking of his brother. So yeah. So the steeplechase looks good for the Ducks for the future.
Yeah, and I think Scasso could end up being a very important name for Oregon. I mean, you look at what he did this indoor season, didn't really race much, but comes out and runs well in his first outdoor meet. He ran at Pac-12s and West Regional for them last year, and I don't know if that's a sign of necessarily of where he was or as much as where the team was. He was 25th at Pac-12s. if he can kind of continue to develop, he could be a nice key depth piece for this Oregon team, and that quite frankly just needs a lot of a lot more stability in that cross country lineup. And he looks like he could provide that if he continues to run these kind of times.
I just want to clarify. According to World Athletics, Del Barrio has run 8:39. So I don't know where I got 8:34 from, but
Still very fast.
still very fast. Still very fast. So, okay, that's all I got there.
Yeah, and I mean for the BYU guys, this is what BYU does.
Yeah.
They churn out these kind of guys that
And
will.
Houghton and Corrigan are great. Like they're just like, frankly, they will run 10 seconds faster.
Oh, I mean, absolutely, yeah, 100%. You're going to see. I mean, how many guys at the West Regional for BYU and the Steeplechase? It's going to be loaded like it always is.
What is it? 48 names. So what? How many do you think they get? Like 9? 8 or 9? Yeah. Like that's. I legitimately think I would put money. Like if someone said like over under 7.5, I think I'd put money on the over.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go through it, but I mean, based off their track record and their ability to get like 4 guys to the final, like a couple years ago. Was that what it was?
If they move Troutner to the Steeple, he could get it. I don't think they would move Bonds there.
No, I don't know. I don't think they have like the top end capabilities of like the Clayson Shumway years of like where they had a bunch of guys and Kenneth Rooks and all those guys. But
Adam Wood,
they got the depth and they know how to develop those guys to run regional qualifying times.
Yep.
On the women's side in the steeplechase, we saw Mia Kane of UCLA run a PR of 10:04 in the steeplechase. Coming off of a solid indoor season, raced sparingly, but ran 9:15 in the 3K, 4:49 in the mile. Comes out and runs a pretty much perfect, maybe a little slower, but pretty darn perfect conversion from 3K flat to 3K steeple.
UCLA's having like a few decent names here. Like they've done pretty well. Mia Kane just ran 10:04, and they've had Kate Jendrezak. She just ran 2:02. Was a national qualifier. Ran 2:02 during the indoor track season. Was really great. Rose Pittman is a 2:03 runner who was generally pretty decent. Maybe not quite as strong as Jendrezak, but there's a few decent names. On the women's side there at UCLA that I go, all right. I mean, it's not. I think I'll blow the doors off anyone, but there's maybe a little bit more talent there than I think we maybe initially expected.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me, and when we're talking about just like, hey, like we're seeing a little improvement in this one athlete and another improvement in this athlete, and maybe even they're across different seasons, across different events. But that's kind of what we were talking about with Boston College a few years ago, and I think that's where you can build this momentum as a program where you can just slowly improve, like, and get one national caliber athlete in this event, one national caliber athlete in another, and then all of a sudden you got this program that's qualifying for nationals in cross country and having consistency in terms of scoring points at the national meet in indoor and outdoor track. Still a long ways away from that with UCLA, but you like to see like the way they're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Okay.
Do we want to go to some transfer news?
Do we not want to talk about Riley Penn? Did we not mention her?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Well, I guess I briefly touched on Riley Penn and Bailey Hertenstein earlier. I think for me, for Penn, this is very noticeable that you're running this fast of a time this early in the season. She's clearly, I think we've seen her be capable of these kind of times, but to run it this early, her first opportunity to do so, I think it is certainly a standout performance in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, she's great. I'm not exactly surprised by the time anymore. I mean, I think at this point, like, just is what it is. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, I didn't know if we had touched on her already. I don't really have much more to offer.
I mentioned her and so you didn't miss much in terms of my analysis.
All right, then yes, we will move off of them, and we'll move to some transfer news. We put this out a couple of weeks ago, some transfer portal stuff. In fact, we're actually going to be putting out after we finish this podcast. And there's one piece of news, and that's Alex Carlson of Rutgers. Some of you may know her. as the woman who's run 2:05 for 800 meters, 2:42 for 1,000 meters, 4:31 in the mile, 8:56 for 3,000 meters. She's also fairly decent on the grass as well. 10th at the Mid Atlantic Cross Country Regional Championships,
Yep.
20th at the Big Ten XC Championships this past fall, 11th at Big Paul Short as well. She's on the transfer portal. I've been told that she's not a grad transfer; she's a standard transfer, which I thought was interesting. Um, where do you like her to go?
Ooh, it's an excellent question. Headed from Rutgers. She's just such a complete athlete, and at the top of her game can be competitive in all 3 seasons. I mean, she's coming off of winning Big Ten title in the mile, running 4:34. Clearly, still very very good. Hasn't quite hit the peaks that she has from a couple years ago in terms of times, but still obviously running exceptionally well. I feel like Florida State makes a little sense for her.
Oh, I like that. That's an interesting move. Okay.
Geographically, very different, obviously,
Very
but this is the type of woman that they like to target, and I think she's someone that would be a huge help for them in the cross country this coming fall, and also is someone that should be scoring points for them at the ACC meet and potentially at the national meet if she's running at full cylinders.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting. Huh. And it's hard because like usually what a great indication of where someone is going to go is based on what their hometown is, right?
Sure.
Usually, no, it's not by no means foolproof. I'm not saying that it is, but their hometown is usually a good indication. Like, okay, they'll go here, they'll go here, and she's a New Jersey native. She's
Mm-hmm.
from Annandale, New Jersey, so she will naturally have gone to Rutgers, and that makes total sense, right? Although even someone of her caliber, that's still a little bit of a surprising move to go to Rutgers. Um, and that's why I'm trying to figure out like what's the right spot for her. It's Syracuse just seems too long distance heavy. Penn State seems too middle distance heavy.
Yeah.
Would Villanova be like the right call? That doesn't seem right. Princeton, I don't even know if she could use her eligibility at Princeton, but
Yeah, Villanova was the first name that came to mind for me, but it doesn't. It's just not the right timing. I think for program and athlete.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm like, okay, so Georgetown, Providence.
Yeah, Georgetown makes sense.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like Providence as
you
well.
don't go that much more north. You don't go that much further south. Actually, Boston College.
Yeah. Mentioned them earlier. That would make a lot of sense for them.
That would make a lot of sense. They are open to new additions and internationals and transfers more specifically. And Pete Watson's trying to build something there. They've got a really nice base that they can work with. They were just cross country national qualifiers. They developed top milers, as we just saw.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that screams Alex Carlson. Like it's not a drastic like deviation there. So now, granted, like again, this is all just based on geographics. Like it's usually
Yeah,
again a good indication. She could go to NC State. She could go out west. Like it's just one of those things where you just don't ever know. But
sure.
something that Boston College, I think I kind of like a lot.
I do like Boston College too because I think the team like makeup that I'm looking for is someone that is like fringe national meet qualifier in
Mm-hmm.
cross country who could just use a little injection of talent this year to kind of push them over the edge, and then also a team that has some middle distance history or some middle distance stars currently. And I think both that Boston College and Florida State make a lot of sense in
Yep.
both of those aspects.
Yeah, I like the Florida State. I would maybe not throw out Louisville either.
Yeah,
Because she screams like a Riley Penn with a little more endurance. Like
sure.
that's basically what I get. I think Bailey Myers, who's joined Joe Franklin from Florida State, more specifically,
Yeah,
actually,
I mean that's Riley Penn was going to go to Florida State.
exactly, which is why I go. I was like, if anyone's gonna go to like Louisville, might be it. As we know, like they brought in transfers. They will bring in
Mhm.
transfers. Joe Franklin again is willing to bring in transfers, and especially
Yeah,
with as time goes on, when scholarships that the prior coaching regime has allocated,
Phased out a little bit.
as they
Yeah.
phase out, the more and more and more you will bring in. And now Frank will hopefully, with each more year, have names that he will more specifically want to bring in. Carlson could be one of them, and I imagine Bailey Myers would be very happy to work with her as well. So,
Yep. I think those are great schools to mention. A huge talent. So wherever
yeah,
she lands, it'll be a big win for them. Elsewhere, we have Max Murphy of Iowa entering the transfer portal as a grad transfer. Has run 340 in the 1500, 759 3K, 1339 in the 5K. He's run well.
28:57 in the 10K.
28:57 in the 10K. He's run well during the cross country season, 69th at NCAA's. I mean, just a very complete runner, going to help you in every single aspect of the track, of on the grass. Where do you see him being a good fit?
Yeah, I think he's exceptionally versatile, underrated talent, underappreciated, not admittedly super consistent. Like the consistency needs to be better,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of just like what value he can bring to the table, it's significant. The names that for the teams that I had listed for him as like potential possible names, and I want you to tell me which one you think is the best one in your opinion,
Yeah,
because I feel like I have a pretty good grasp. Like I would be surprised if one of these one, two, three, four, five, six, if one of these six teams was not hit, and that
sure.
is Texas, Iowa State, Tennessee, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and Missouri.
I like that list a lot. I think very likely will land in one of those places. For me, I think Wisconsin makes the most sense.
Mm.
I think, I mean, obviously he has good middle distance chops, but he doesn't scream like Iowa State, Texas kind of runner.
The
I
Iowa State thing would also be odd if he went from
Yeah,
Iowa to
that
Iowa
would be
State.
tough for
Yeah.
tough to go from Iowa to Iowa State. Wisconsin just seems like a really nice fit. And you're talking about needing to improve consistency. He's going to be running with a lot of guys that have that consistency. He's going to be running against much higher caliber of runners day in and day out in practice. And I think that helps a lot when you're talking about finding a consistent rhythm in races when you have that in practice as well. I think Wisconsin makes a lot of sense. They need someone like him. They're going to be kind of reloading a little bit after this year. And I think he's the perfect guy to kind of keep them in the national conversation. And I think they're a program that can really elevate him at the same time, too.
I think if I had to choose, it would come down to Tennessee or Notre Dame. I would love to throw Missouri in there. I think actually he's like a really good Missouri fit, but from a long term viability, he's not what they need, and he's
Yeah,
not what they would go after.
no,
I don't think so. At least not based on some of the chats that Donnie Spees, who did that article for us, the Missouri Project, with Kyle Evermore. I mean, based on, I think it's a little bit more of like a longevity thing. I think
sure.
Tennessee, because he can he's basically Dylan Jacobs light, basically in
Yeah.
terms of his skill set. Like, he's a great 1500 guy who's probably better in the longer distances,
Mm-hmm.
but Carlson is happy to introduce grad transfers. He likes to introduce guys who are probably roughly of this caliber. He's done
Yeah.
it consistently. He would prefer that they be 5K, 10K guys who can be, utilized across all 3 seasons, specifically cross country, but can then also help them in the mile, where specifically in the indoor track is where you get a lot of value, especially when you add in the DMR.
DMR. Yeah.
So, from my perspective, there, I think Tennessee's like a home run. I think Notre Dame, very similar. It's almost the exact same thing. It's like, Carlson gave them the blueprint of how to recruit
Yeah.
transfers, and Murphy would be the exact fit for them as well.
Yeah. No, I like both of those fits as well. But yeah, I think one of those three schools are probably where he ends up.
Yeah.
If I would guess. So yeah, he's someone that could really shift the picture for a lot of these teams. Like I mean, he's not going to come in and be like a top 2 scorer, but he's someone that can be a 3 to 5 scorer and really provide a lot of stability and shape to a lineup that might not otherwise have a lot of question marks. I mean, you talk about a lot of these teams. there's just been a lot of ebb and flow in those lineups throughout the last year. So they really need someone who can just stick and be in that top 5. Let's go to another grad transfer, and that is Abby Loveys. She is headed to the transfer portal. Former Princeton runner, currently at NC State. She's run 4:28 in the 1500, 9:22 in the 3K, and 16:05 in the 5K. Has potential in cross country. Wasn't great this past year, but was third.
Well, she wasn't even racing, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But was third in 2022 at the Mid Atlantic cross country regionals. Obviously, based off of those times, you would think that we would see a little bit more from her in cross country, and I think that's still there.
I think I'd argue the opposite.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I mean, third at Mid Atlantic. I guess in general, some of these other performances, like 18th at Paul Short, I think.
It could have been a little bit better. I mean, I don't know. The whole like she's been at NC State, hasn't competed.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, like there's 1,000 different things that it could be. If I had to guess, maybe it was like an injury or something. Was like, hey, I don't know. Maybe something academically speaking, where I was like, hey, I'm whatever. But
just might not be a good culture fit. You just never know.
Yeah, you just never know. So, but regardless, when she's at her best, she's really good.
Mm-hmm.
She's a former Princeton runner. I believe she's a New Jersey native, which again brings me to wonder if Villanova or Syracuse would be options for her. I think I said that maybe an Ivy League program would be great, but she can't use the eligibility.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I even said that. So that's not correct. So yeah, I think like Syracuse or Villanova is really the only two spots, good academic, long distance oriented programs near her hometown. Like that's kind of where I can get it.
I wonder if Providence would take a shot. She's a little outside of the kind of traditional model.
I think it's a pretty good option actually. That is a great option.
I think she would be could be a big pickup for them as they kind of keep the ball rolling on the grass and gives them a little bit of a diversity to their track lineup as well.
I like that a lot. I think I actually like that way more than any other thing that I just mentioned there. Hey, this is why we have you.
Exactly. This is why we have the podcast. It's just to improve our writing and improve
validate each other. That's all we do. Just echo box. So
exactly. So yeah, I think she's someone that could be a nice little buy low candidate at this point. I mean, you think about where she was coming out from Princeton, and then obviously didn't find success at NC State, but still is that talented runner that she was at Princeton. I think could be a sneaky good pickup for whoever lands her. Anybody else you want to hit on before we wrap up?
Can we talk about Jacob Nenow? Because I do think he's important.
Yes.
He's currently a freshman at Tennessee. He has entered the transfer portal. He was one of the top names from the class of 2023 distance wise. He ran 8:16 in the 3K, 8:47 for 3,200 meters, and 14:35. Was 32nd at SEC XC championships, but wasn't really much of a factor. I think he's really talented, high upside in the transfer portal. I know that he was also looking at Oregon when he was trying to come out
from Oregon, so that makes sense.
He's from Oregon. He's also from Portland. So I'll leave it to you. Does he choose Portland or Oregon? I'll just say I think it's the Ducks. I think he goes to the Ducks.
Yeah, I agree. Let me throw out another team.
Oh, if you say Washington.
And it's not Washington.
Okay.
This admittedly would be a huge pickup for this program.
Can you give me
I'll give you some hints. I'll give you some light hints. Program that has risen to national prominence in the last few years.
Okay.
Does not pull in this type of recruit very often. Has had some stars though over the last few years in the longer distances in cross country. No, in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, this is going to bother me because, like, it's the Pacific Northwest.
I believe it's Pacific Northwest.
I don't think I would say Boise.
No.
I don't know.
Gonzaga.
Oh, that makes such perfect sense.
I
Yeah,
would love
actually,
it. He would be perfect.
he would be
Perfect.
phenomenal. A great yes. That would be such a good fit. Agreed. 100% agreed. How did I not think of Gonzaga?
I mean, and he's the type of guy like and I'm not saying this is what happened, but like Tennessee brought in so many guys last year, and it's not hard to get kind of lost in the shuffle of that. You go to Gonzaga, he's going to be the like guy coming,
They have money. They have money
and
for
yeah,
it.
exactly, and they have a proven track record of being able to develop guys. They need someone like him at this moment. I think it's a perfect marriage.
I like that a lot. I'd still put money on Oregon just because
I
of
agree. I think that's gonna be hard to turn down. Like you would be turning down the prestige of Oregon. Like I'm sure living in Oregon, that's something that you always kind of think about and dream about. But putting that aside, I think Gonzaga is the better fit.
I love the Gonzaga pick. That would be such a good pick. I don't think he was going to go there, but it
No,
would like on paper across the board. It'd be so good.
Jacob, if you need help, call us. We will steer you in the right direction.
We can't do anything about it, but like we will try our darndest. Like we all of a sudden become really random big like Gonzaga fans. I don't know why, but like left
Yeah,
that
we
license.
were on
Really,
them like super early,
we
and they
were
eventually came good.
we were on frankly we were on them a little too
Too
early, but
early.
like we were on them a little too early, but we were on them early, and that's what matters. Okay, good, yeah, great one. That's one of your better takes that you've had so far. Good start to the outdoor track season. Okay, I think that's it.
Yep, this was good. A little mix of results and just some like hypothetical transfer news. I like it when our episodes have a little of everything and we're not just like scrolling through results the whole time. As much fun as it is to see great performances, like little diversity there.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. Okay, so this was good. Nice job. We're gonna have more, I'm sure, transfer stuff. It usually
Yeah.
always happens. Like come April, I'll probably put another one out. Usually always happens. So keep an eye on the site for that. End of season awards, we got D1, we got D2, we got D3, we got NAIA, we've got high school, we've got pro. We don't have pro. I'm just kidding. But like, well, we have
Sneaky?
it all.
Question mark?
Um, yeah, we have all that. Go find us on YouTube, the Stride Report, interviews from the Pineview Invitational. Donnie Spees, shout out to him. Working on a cool D3 feature piece with Connor right now, so that's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, we got a handful of other pieces of content all over the site. Obviously, Blueville Podcast. Check out Beyond the Stride. That's coming. A new episode with Liam Murphy is coming this week.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's it's gonna be a good
Isaac's
one.
been pulling some great guests
He
since
has been pulling
he
some
started.
really great guests, so I'm excited to kind of get that one edited and out. And I think that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.